Hi, I'm Sara Teppema. I'm a member of the SOA Board of Directors, and I'm excited to be here today to talk as part of the SOA Thanks Volunteer video series to talk with Erin Sheriff. It's also part of our Pride Month series, and I'm super excited to talk to Erin today. I know her and have met her several times, it's just a really great honor to be able to interview you, Erin. Erin is a pricing actuary with Principal Financial, and I was hoping that you could start out and just talk a little bit about what you do right now and also how you became an actuary.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll start with how I became an actuary. You know, in high school, I wanted to do something that had to do with math and strategic thinking, but wasn't necessarily teaching or education. I had the privilege of growing up in Des Moines, Iowa, where there are a lot of actuaries. You know, so I knew of some neighbors, some friends who had actuaries in their families, and learned of that profession really in high school. I thought it fit what I was looking for, so that's what I pursued. Right now, well, in my past, I guess I worked a little bit with retirement and reinsurance, but the majority of my career has been in group insurance. And currently, I work on the renewal strategy for our group products. So group products are annually renewable, and they require a combination of analytics and some creativity to set a good strategy. So I enjoy what I do. I enjoy that I get to work with a lot of different business units while I do that, and it keeps me busy.
Cool. Cool. How long have you been with Principal?
I've been a principal for 14 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. And did you go there straight out of college?
No, so I worked at Cigna, a healthcare company out in Connecticut, Philadelphia. I worked there for 6 years, got through my exams out there, and went through their student program before I moved back to Iowa.
Great, great. Can you share any opportunities in your career and the places you've worked that has changed your life in some way?
Yeah, I would say, you know, our company recently moved over to the NASDAQ, and I had the opportunity in 2018 to represent Principal at NASDAQ's LGBT Leadership Summit.
Cool.
And while I was out there, I got the chance to talk to a bunch of the largest tech companies, airlines, retail companies about LGBT issues. And one of the things we were talking about at the time was non-binary gender identity. That was around the time that some states were just passing their regulations that would recognize non-binary as a legal, like on legal identification, driver's license, birth certificates, even passports. And so my company was just beginning to research and dig into what that would mean for our industry and our products. And it was nice to get to connect with some other companies in other industries and see what they were doing. Airlines at that point were on top of it. They were already working through their boarding process to make sure that ticketing matched identification. Social media companies and rideshare companies, they were also getting a jump start on that. And since then, you know, I made a lot of friends and was able to network there, but it's been nice to see in the years since how many companies are picking up on it. I smile every time I see a company that degenderizes their toys or their clothing, for example. But I would say that was an opportunity that changed my life.
That's so cool. I have to imagine that was a really powerful experience, you know, coming from, I know Principal's really great about a lot of this, you know, a lot of the LGBTQ issues, but just being a part of that and kind of getting, I'm projecting this on you, but I would imagine it made you feel very included and very, you know, like you really belong there. So I don't, can you validate that? Is that true?
Yeah, I agree. And it also validated what we were thinking. And, you know, maybe our industry is not at the forefront of a lot of changes, but I think it validated the work we were doing and where it felt like we were going to be going.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. You wrote an article in the Actuary about a year ago, which was awesome and really so grateful that you wrote that article when you did it. But it talks a lot about these issues and what the insurance industry really needs to start doing. Can you talk a bit more about like where you see the industry and then how actuaries as a profession can help to move that along? in terms of non-binary and gender issues especially, but really LGBTQ issues generally.
Yeah, I think at the highest level, I view it as today we insure a group of people, an entire group, and we force them into a binary sex designation. And so we have the full risk of claims already, and we include that in our experience studies. But that categorization doesn't necessarily feel good to our customers. And so to me, I think we could move to a gender-based rating system that doesn't change our overall risk at all, but would respect the customer's identity, right? And when doing that, I think we'll need to be careful with how we rate non-binary customers, for example, similar to how we rate using zip codes or salaries today.
Yeah.
Ideally, our profession would have an ethical concern with perpetuating systemic inequalities.
Yeah.
So that's where I think we're headed. I think we're in a unique position as actuaries to promote more equitable practices by determining which risks we should let vary and which risks we should socialize.
Really cool. Yeah, that's great. And I think we as actuaries have a very strong role to play, as you said. And so we sometimes kind of are in control of the data. And if we don't care about it, how can we get other people to care about it too? So I'm really excited. And like I said, your article really changed the way I looked at things.
Yeah, I was trying to personalize it and kind of give a real world example, but I grew up in a world where gender identity wasn't talked about much. I didn't even know the difference between sex and gender for the majority of my life. I was simply a tomboy. And, I didn't say at the beginning, I use she, her pronouns. I view myself as a gender non-conforming female. I wear clothes that are typically labeled as male. Sometimes I say, well, they're female now because I wear them, but
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, but in my personal history, when you look at the risks that truly affect your mortality and morbidity, a lot of times those risks are related to our gender as opposed to our sex. Because they have to do with our lifestyle choices, things like smoking, drinking alcohol, how fast or aggressively we drive, how well we eat or exercise. All those things affect our mortality more so than the sex that we're born with. And so when we contrast that to using gender gives us the ability as a person to explain more about our lifestyle, right? Gender is a social construct. It's not something you're born with. It's how you fit into society as more masculine or more feminine. And I think there's potential that gender is actually a more accurate risk metric. So, I mean, it'll be proven out over time, I suppose. But yeah, in the article, I was trying to make that point that using gender, not only does it feel a lot better to our customers and it's treating them how they want to be treated, but there's a potential for better risk evaluations as well.
Because I think not everybody understands gender versus sex. And so you're saying, let's use gender. And sometimes gender may be not male or female, it may be non-binary, right?
Right. Yes. Gender doesn't have to do with your anatomy. It has to do with how you fit into social expectations. And sometimes using masculine or feminine helps people understand maybe how that's different than physical sex. So that's how I use gender. And yeah, I mean, the other thing we run into is gender, or I should say sex, historically has been used as a rating factor. And it probably will be continued to be used unless the states all decide that we shouldn't use it. And maybe that's in our future, but as long as we are able to use it, you kind of have to use it to remain competitive. And hopefully if we continue to use a sex-based rating system, that we can shift toward gender as opposed to sex.
Very cool, very interesting. I feel like we have a long way to go, but at least we've got people like you shepherding us in the right direction. So thank you for all of your research in that area and all of your thought. It's so helpful, I think, to all of us. I guess shifting a little bit, can you talk a bit about your, working in multiple areas, but especially for one company for a long time, I guess what advice would you have to younger actuaries in terms of navigating their workplace?
Yeah, specifically to these issues, right? If you're trying to work on equality of any sort and pulling that into work, I think starting with education is key. That's what I've found works the best here. A small group of us started the research, like I said, in 2018 on this specific topic. And the more people we talked to, the more we heard the same questions from everybody. And so we took a step back and we just started with an educational session. Everybody knows LGBTQ people in their lives, right? And they can relate these topics to people they know, make it real. And the more people know, the more people that we have to work toward a solution to some of the issues that LGBTQ people face in buying insurance or in the workplace in general.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for saying that. And I guess if you were to change one thing about the profession or where you work, what would you change? Is it continue educating people, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think the further I get in my career, the more I get pulled into, or the more I volunteer towards some of these equity type conversations. I think as a profession, it would be nice if this were more prevalent, you know, and I did see that when I went to the annual meeting before COVID. I saw a lot of topics related to equity in what we do. And so that's encouraging. I learned that we have the SAGA group, the Sexuality and Gender Alliance of Actuaries. It's something I wasn't aware of before that.
And they're a force, by the way. They're just awesome. They're grassroots, and they're just doing great stuff. I love seeing everything they're doing. It's so cool.
I agree. You know, so that's what I enjoy about our profession. We're a pretty small profession, but the more I've gotten into it and gotten to meet people, you know, the more opportunities that I see in moving our profession forward.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your experiences. We really appreciate it, and thanks for volunteering, and thanks in advance for all your continued volunteer efforts in this area, because we really need your voice, and we're so excited to have it.
You bet.